when you send like a USD stable coin to an emerging country, like the biggest problem today is one, how do you convert that to the local currency? And two, how do you like exchange that for like cash? Because a lot of these economies are very cash prevalent still. So even if you save a lot of cost in like sending the stable coin, let's say from the US to Mexico or whatever, then you still have the issue of what is the exchange rate between the stable coin and the Mexican peso, and how do you withdraw that without like incurring as much cost as you would with a normal like remittance. So that's like the biggest issue that hasn't been solved today, like the on and off ramp and the like conversion to local currencies.
This episode is brought to you by Arkham. Arkham allows crypto traders and investors to look inside the wallets of the best traders, largest funds, and most influential players in the crypto markets today. We'll hear more about Arkham later in today's episode. Quick shout out to Permissionless 4 coming this summer to New York, June 24th through June 26th. We'll have speakers from all across the industry, including Hayden Adams, Kyle Samani, Guy Young, and more. Get your tickets today by following the link in today's show notes, and make sure to use code BELL10 to save 10% on your purchase. See you there. Hey everyone, quick disclaimer before we get into today's episode. Nothing said on Bell Curve is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our opinions, not financial advice. Our guests and I may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed. Hey everyone, this week's episode is a cross post from 0xResearch. Enjoy.
Welcome back to another episode of 0xResearch. Today, I'm joined by Boccaccio, as always, and Carlos, our resident expert on Solana and all things related. How are we doing today, guys?
What, are we doing
we couldn't get Mug
episode?
today, unfortunately. But what'd you say?
Are we doing a Solana episode?
No, but that's just how I don't have a nickname for Carlos, so I just call him the Solana expert. we need a nickname for him. You got any ideas?
I shouldn't start testing them out on recording. I need to first experience. I don't have any.
We'll workshop that. We'll come back to it. We're missing Mark today. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. Last minute deadlines.
Ryan.
We understand. And Ryan, well, to be fair, past couple episodes, Ryan comes on. He says stated versus revealed preference. And so we figured give him a week or two. He really needs to come up with some extra lines. So hopefully he'll be back soon with some new content. But the rest of us, I think we can eke one out today.
Yeah. I mean, I can just answer every 30 minutes and say stated versus revealed preference. Really missing him. Dude, Ryan is so funny because he wants to come on the pod and then he's like, he's too busy. So we keep telling him, but you're too busy. You can't constantly come on the pod. And he's like, no, I got to come on. And then he's too busy. Doesn't work. Big man.
He did, Carlos, he likes listening to Bankless, so it cuts into his pod time.
So funny that he likes doing that. He just rage baits. It's like when you scroll like your For You page. It's like, fuck, I'm gonna kill myself. That's what he does. Carlos, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. I'm excited to get into all things. I think Plasma was the big news today. Bog is really happy.
I'm very happy. I mean, obviously you guys know, but typically when there's something that's opening up, like a vault with a cap, you usually don't really have a chance of getting in because it just gets botted to hell. I managed to get in with the size that I wanted to get in as well. Like I didn't have to do like a limited amount or anything. I just I'm in. Felt really good. Felt really, really good. I put out a flash note on it around an hour before. Because I wanted to see if the math made sense. It does. It does. The math makes sense. I think, Danny, I'm just pulling it up right now. Do you have it in front of you? No.
Yeah. You want me to pull it?
Yeah, can you?
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
what do you want me to show?
Yeah, I just want to go to the chart, to be honest. This table looks...
This guy?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yes.
There we go.
Very good. Thank you, Danny.
Beautiful.
So, I gotta give first of all a shout out to DeFiist. I think that's like his name on Twitter. He's at Split Capital, which I did a pod with Zahir from Split Capital and Paul, who's the founder of Plasma. few months back. And Zahir and Split Capital are investors, so I took their word, meaning that like DeFi has posted on Twitter that they would have a 3-month lockup. So I kind of took their word for it. I assume they know. And based on that, so the top table shows the 3-month lockup. And if deposits, I think deposits will be at like 1.5 bill to 2 bill. To be honest with you, I think they raise the cap every week. And FTV at TGE, if it's like 2 bill, I think you get 30 to 40% APY annualized, which I think is a pretty good deal, to be honest with you, like on stable coins, because you're just depositing USDC. And then you obviously get the option to buy at the end of, like whenever they want a TGE, you have to lock it up for a minimum of 40 days. And afterwards you get to buy. Depending on how much you locked it up for. Currently, it's still in the deposit phase. It's going to move to a lockup phase, and then afterwards, there's going to be like a buy. And then based on how long you locked it up for, you get a pro rata guaranteed allocation to buy in. I think this is like one of those things that I thought made a lot of sense to do, even though the math doesn't sound that enticing. Like objectively, 40% in crypto is not a glorious return. I do think that it probably has more legs than 2 bill, but I want it to be as conservative as possible if I'm doing valuation stuff. Yeah, I thought it was a good opportunity. I think a lot of people, Americans, probably not as good of an opportunity because you have a 12-month lockup, and you have to be an accredited investor. I'm based out in the EU, so I didn't really mind. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'd be curious to see. They have already hit 500 million, right?
Yeah,
in deposits.
yeah.
So
This was one
I think
thing
that's the big question, right? Is like, I think you mentioned, maybe 1.52 billion is maybe your expectation. I wouldn't be surprised for this to be, to see a massive, especially if they're willing to just keep raising the caps. I mean, we saw Eigenlayer, stuff like the Boyko vaults, like multi-billions went into a lot of these things in the past.
Yeah, so
those were quite different, but it's
that's
similar
what
expectations.
I mentioned in my note as well, and I completely agree with you. That's like the massive risk is dilution. To be honest with you, I told this to Ryan Connor as well, and he was like, "You can't say that," but I feel like downside is semi-limited here. Like at 500 mil FTV, I don't think there's massive downside risk for Plasma. But like you said, like there's a potential for dilution, and the other issue is that if they decide instead of like if this isn't a 2-3 month process, but instead it's a 6 to 12 month process, then you're basically missing out on whatever capital you invested. You can't put it elsewhere, and on top of that, you're getting diluted. Realistically, I think that's pretty bad. I don't think they'll do that because that would probably leave a sour taste in people's mouths. From what I've seen from the team, they're pretty agile and they seem pretty smart. I know they just had a direct competitor announced last week called Stable, who's also backed by Bitfinex and Tether. So we'll see. We'll see how everything turns out. I like the Plasma team, and I thought 500 mil FTV was a pretty good deal, to be honest with you. Like I think if a chain is not like a pure scam, 500 mil FTV unlock at TGE is probably like 80% of the time a buy, right? Like I feel like that feels logical.
Yeah, I feel like it makes sense. I agree that dilution is the biggest risk, and I feel like everyone who wanted to get in didn't get in. Like if you look at the figures, there are around like 1,100 depositors, like 970 addresses deposited more than $1,000, and the top 10 addresses got 40% of the 500 mil, so like 200 mil. And then if you look at the top 100 addresses, they account for 83% of the 500 mil. So I feel like the allocation is pretty concentrated in whales with big conviction. And if they want to like increase like the distribution like for smaller size accounts or whatever, they may increase like the cap. But yeah, it feels like something they might do in the following weeks. I feel like the minimum days that it was locked is like 40 days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that like 1 month minimum, 1.5 months. I think that's not bad. That's like, I don't know. I'm like I said, my biggest issue is that if I lock up and then they keep diluting, and then they're like, we're actually extending the lockup period to 6 months. That's when I'm like, okay, guys, like that's why I didn't sell any exposure to put into it. I just like had stables lying around. I'm pretty comfortable putting in USDT into a USDT backed project.
Mhm.
But let's see. There's, like you said, big people donated. One thing I actually wanted deposited. One thing I wanted to mention was Split Capital raised 5 mil at 18% on Wildcat Finance. So they're paying 18% to lenders on Wildcat Finance. So in my mind, it made sense that this would have at least 18% APY, because if Split Capital, who is close to the team, understands that, like, because they know how much money they can make by depositing into this better than anybody, probably apart from the team. So unless something goes horribly, horribly wrong, I feel like that's a pretty good like baseline to take, and saying, okay, this is like, if they're willing to bet, if they're willing to pay out 18% to deposit into this, I think the minimum here should be 18%. Right? That's not a stupid take.
Yeah, naturally they would be expecting, whatever
Yeah.
their base case is should be probably a multiple of that, I would expect.
Yeah.
And they're, factoring some risks there. But yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
guessing the goal would not be to go like delta neutral on that loan, essentially.
Yeah.
But that
They
makes
were
sense.
already investors, right? So
Yeah, they
this is
were.
yeah. That makes
I do
sense.
think on the time component, like I think time is a big risk, but I think there's a trade-off here for the team, right? Because Circle is in the news, the stock is doing crazy things. Everyone on CT is saying like, why would I like the valuation looks stupid, and yet on the other half of that is just like there's a very big stablecoin narrative now, and it's like it's the only like pure equity that's just stablecoin exposure, I think is probably how I would term it. So for Plasma, these guys, like, you kind of have this narrative tailwind behind you right now, and if you sit around 6-8 months with funds locked up, like, you might miss out on like a valuation bump when the thing goes live. So I think they kind of have to play that trade-off as well. If they launch the thing now, I think you'd expect a lot of activity.
Arkham was created to make blockchains human readable and simplify blockchain data so that it is meaningful and useful to the average crypto user. With their new exchange, users can see what the top traders are buying and selling with Arkham Intel, and then trade on that information with Arkham Exchange. To get started, follow the link in the show notes below. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply. Do your own research.
So I should probably give a quick background on Plasma as well. But I recommend that people listen to the pod that I did, because it was really good. Like, they were fantastic. They explained everything very well. But their like whole thing is, it's a Bitcoin side chain / L2 that gets security from Bitcoin. Anyway, it's EVM compatible. 0 fees on USDT transactions, except for complex transactions, such as anything non-payments and sending around money. That's what the complex transactions are. So lending, borrowing, smart contract interactions, those will have fees. And I asked them, how do you prevent spam in this case? And I think they're just going to do minimum account, like minimum value within accounts, which seems like, objectively, if that's the first thing you hear, you're like, okay, well, that's not a great fix. So it's probably going to go to shit at some point. But it's also like, it's a great way to start a chain. Like, I don't think chains need to be, I know we say this a lot and we're like, chains need to have a bunch of stuff to do day one, but also there's no point in waiting like a year just to figure everything out. Like, I think you can go mainnet beta and then go like full mainnet at some point. I don't think there's a lot of sense in like, oh, we have to figure out this like very intricate thing, and then the market's fast along. Like you said, Danny, like, we have Circle. It was up 23% pre-market today. I think it was like 126, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about it. Stablecoins are obviously massive right now, given that everybody's apart from Circle, like that's the big thing that TradFi is pushing is stablecoin settlement. You see Stripe integrations. Um, so I think they would miss out on some narrative bump if they didn't launch over the next 3-4 months. On the other hand, obviously you need the product ready. I don't think they're doing something super complicated, to be honest with you. Like, I think they're gonna start off with a smaller set, um, fast hot stuff BFT derived plasma BFT, um, and then that's it. Like, they have some Bitcoin bridge integration. I think they're posting chain data onto Bitcoin every some period of time to like get the security of Bitcoin, which basically means the final state of the chain. They can always roll back to it. Hopefully, they don't have to roll back, but um, yeah, I think it should be fine. That's me talking myself through my investment that I made this morning. I think it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. I think I have two thoughts from that. The first is I fully agree. You don't need to have everything ready to push to mainnet. And I'm thinking of Monad as an example of a chain doing totally opposite of that, where they're like constantly like pushing the date of the mainnet release. And I think it's better just to break things in production than to just like push and push the date and potentially miss out on a narrative. And then the second thing that I'm thinking is like, do you guys think this has any implications for like Tron and Ethereum USDT supply once it launches? That do you think it migrates over to Plasma?
This is the one thing I wanted to mention. So they were actually very vocal about this on the pod, and they are very vocal about this. I think they are directly going for Tron. And their main arguments are two. One is that Tron is expensive now, which is true. Two is that Tron is centralized, which is also true. And they say that they want to capture basically that. So Tron's very popular in countries that don't have trust in their central banking and that don't have trust in the banking system in general. Turkey, Lebanon, Argentina, emerging markets. Um, and in these countries, Tron, the network, is used for USDT payments. Um, that's the exact market that Plasma is going for, which is just the USDC market in these emerging markets. Now, the issue here is that Tron is expensive, yes. Tron is centralized, yes, but it has probably the biggest moat in crypto, right? Like, I don't think anybody else has that moat. Maybe USDT has the moat, that's it, but that's also related. I'd say Tron, like in terms of distribution, in terms of contracts and contacts with like whoever's using it, payment providers, settlement for USDT, they have the best network. So it's a very tough market to enter into. I do think that Tether backing and Bitfinex backing and Paulo backing, um, and I guess Peter Thiel backing is like enough to do it. We'll see. But yeah, that's the market they're going after, is like payments and settlement and USD, like euro dollar market. Um, we'll see. It's really tough. It's I don't know if you can beat it out very easily. So I think from what I saw, they have the contacts and the contracts within like some of these countries. Um, but it like also depends on if users are willing to switch over, right? Like, you can only do so much, and then because if I'm let's say I'm like a payments provider, I will offer both Tron and Plasma. I'm not going to cut out Tron for Plasma. That doesn't make any sense. So you have to entice the user somehow, which if low fees are going to do it, we'll see. But it's tough to make people switch from one network to another unless they're like trying to make a lot of money. But going from like $3 fees to $0 fees, with one being like very safe and guaranteed, and you've used it for 4 years. I know it's not like it's centralized, but I don't know if a lot of people care in those countries. So we'll see. I think they have their work cut out for them, but I do like them, which is why I invested NFA. But I think they could probably pull it off. This is a long diatribe. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the distribution is the hard and probably expensive part, right? Like wallets, maybe. Like, what are these users using today? Are they using like some Tron wallet? Are they using some Binance wallet? You know, the baked in options to send currencies over specific networks are already present there. So it's like, okay, do you need an agreement with Binance? You need an agreement with, other large exchanges. That's probably not, maybe there's a charge associated with that. We've seen what it takes to get, token listings, for example, in some cases.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would imagine, maybe Bach knows this, but I would imagine Binance is one of the big distribution channels for USDT on Tron. I think people just use Binance ID to receive and send payments. So I think like a plasma integration with this, like Binance and this kind of front ends, would be like a huge first step to get adoption.
yeah, it feels meaningful. The other thing that I know of Tron is that there is gas incentivization. So as like a user, you get maybe one or a few transactions free per day, I want to say, or like per period. So it's like the normal network fees they have become a little bit expensive, but they have this kind of ongoing program where you like build up energy when you don't use the wallet, and then you get like a free transaction sponsored. So um, we'll have to see. I think they might need maybe even more than just free transfers of USDT. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think like USDT has the biggest moat, as Bach said. I think people don't really care what network they're using as long as it's not expensive and it's like free to send. I know Paolo shared like this thing on Twitter where prices in Bolivia stores now are using like USDT. I think that's pretty amazing. I think like as long this is more like a BD thing for Plasma, right? As long as they get the right integrations and people start like B2B, they start using them, they should have no problem like taking over Tron in these like countries.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is like they're going to focus on emerging markets, or if there's also like they have to work with Stripe and stuff. Like in the US, if they're gonna do stablecoin settlements. Because I imagine the money there is probably more. Um,
Do you Yeah. Do you think US businesses are more reluctant on use USDT compared to USDC?
Yeah, I feel like it's not even worth going after the US right now
I think
in terms of USDT integrations.
historically, yes, but this, like, I am not a big politics person or a big understander of legislation and regulation. I'm not going to LARP, but there have been, like, do you guys remember when Paulo did that whole like week in Washington and he like posted pictures of himself in Washington? Do you remember?
Yeah.
And it was like
Yeah.
the same week that all the stablecoin and Genius bills were going on. I think that USDT has made a strong push, from what I understand, into the US market, or they're trying to make a strong push into the US market. I think historically that's been captured by USDC, who tried to get like regulatory capture basically, and make themselves the only stable coin in the US. I think since Paulo was there as a representative, I imagine it didn't work out, and I imagine that USDT will do okay in the US. They also have some key people in power. I think Lutnick, for example, big USDT guy, huge Tether guy, um, very important in the administration.
I do think the business, like in the US, the business integrations is probably like rather than going after the consumer, I guess would be the way to say it, because there are ways, like there are already many ways to send dollars for free to other people, to businesses, and so like just bringing in a chain and like an app and a wallet that lets you do that with Tether doesn't, like within the US, that doesn't feel like a big unlock, whereas elsewhere, of course, I mean, you talked about the pain points. So like I
Yeah,
understand like there's a divide there, but if you can capture like, well, PayPal is trying to roll out their own stablecoin, so I don't know if you'll be able to get Venmo, but if you get partners along those lines and then they use you as, sort of the underlying the back end there, that feels like the valuable angle. It seems like a more difficult ask today.
yeah, no, completely agree. And Jesse from Asula posted about this the other week, and he mentioned that he doesn't really get the stablecoin angle that much for settlement, and he's completely correct, because in developed countries, you don't really need stablecoin payment rails, like USD payment rails. You need it for cross-border payments, and you need it in emerging markets. But like you said, Danny, you can just use Venmo. I can use Revolut. In Canada, they have e-transfer. Like, things are very, very simple, as opposed to in other countries where you can't hold US dollars. First of all, like, that's the big unlock. And the second one is that if you do hold US dollars, you don't really have access to them all the time. I think for a while, like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, but there are, for example, banks in Turkey. You can't necessarily go in and pull out your US dollars all the time. Same in Lebanon. Like, they're not going to let you have it. They need it. So, and they're not going to let you convert to USD as much as you want. So you're right. That's the bigger unlock. If settlement is important, like T+2 is too much and they want instant settlement, which they should, it is more efficient. That's maybe where it can come in, but they would have to make big deals with players like you said, Stripe, Venmo. It's difficult because I can imagine they just launched their own, or USDC's already captured that. We'll see. I think if anybody has a shot, it's Tether. Obviously, like, they have the biggest moat in crypto, and clearly they're welcome in the United States again. So we'll see. It's tough to like decide.
Yeah. I totally agree. Like the biggest product market fit is for emerging economies with high inflation that have like high capital controls against people having US dollars in their bank account. I know for Argentina that was the case at least a couple of years back, where people could not have like US denominated bank accounts, and stablecoin was the only way to do this. And like for cross-border payments, I feel like the biggest issue today for remittances is the crypto on and off ramp. Like when you send like a USD stable coin to an emerging country, like the biggest problem today is one, how do you convert that to the local currency? And two, how do you like exchange that for like cash? Because a lot of these economies are very cash prevalent still. So even if you save a lot of cost in like sending the stable coin, let's say from the US to Mexico or whatever, then you still have the issue of what is the exchange rate between the stable coin and the Mexican peso, and how do you withdraw that without like incurring as much cost as you would with a normal like remittance. So that's like the biggest issue that hasn't been solved today, like the on and off ramp and the like conversion to local currencies.
Yeah, I feel like honestly, it's kind of ridiculous that you still have to use centralized exchanges to off ramp and on ramp. There's no good on ramp off ramp apps. There's no good like Revolut. Do you know what I mean? If you try and on ramp off Revolut, they're gonna take you to the shop. I don't know if that translates well into English, but you get what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
there's no like wallet provider that has a very good on ramp off ramp. I know there's gonna be like MoonPay. I think they take like a 3% fee, which is
It's
ridiculous.
yeah, the card they only on ramp through cards, right? And the credit cards charge like 6%. It's just ridiculous. And even when these providers say it's free, they're like screwing you up with the exchange rate, right?
Yeah,
So they're taking like a lot of money from the exchange rate, and people are not stupid, right?
yeah,
There is stuff like Sphere Pay is pretty good. Their fee is fairly low. It's like I want to say 0.1% or something along those lines. But I don't know how like wide scale they are, like how many countries they've been kind of spread out to. But within the US, it's been fairly good to on and off ramp. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a constant problem is just like at some point you need the interconnect between the stuff that is on chain and the stuff that's off chain. And that's been the hard. It almost feels like you could just get, the plasma guys could go walk around like local villages and just as long as you could just convert enough people there, like, hey, as long as all of you guys who are trading your goods and like providing services to each other are using stable coins, then you don't even need the bank. But it's a hard ask. I think it's like that. You need enough people to get that sort of transition point where, maybe businesses and other entities are willing to just offer up their services maybe at a slight discount by stable payments rather than using traditional.
Over the years, we have seen a multitude of hacks, rugs, and bundled launches. The number one way that crypto traders can protect themselves and the wider community is through on-chain analysis, knowing who is moving funds and where those funds are going. Paired with their new exchange, users can see what the top traders are buying and selling with Arkham Intel, and then trade on that information with Arkham Exchange. Arkham's exchange provides traders with the tooling and liquidity to take action in crypto markets based upon their on-chain observations, bringing them the world's first exchange powered by crypto intelligence. To get started, follow the link in the show notes below. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply. Do your own research.
Let's chug along. Another topic I wanted to bring up again that we reached on the Friday live stream was Morpho. They dropped an announcement around the Morpho token and DAO and the labs entity. And I'm just going to read a line here real quick that they mentioned. They say Morpho Labs is becoming a wholly owned subsidiary of the Morpho Association to eliminate any perceived conflicts with equity value and ensure that token holders and these contributing entities share the same incentive. So they're trying to take a step in the direction here of kind of eliminating or alleviating this like question mark that we've had for a long time, where you've got like DAO or token versus the sort of labs entity that typically is like the founding kind of team behind the project, but then also sort of continues to be an ongoing provider of, you know, dev work and whatnot to the protocol. But there's a weird kind of problem that we haven't solved yet, in that oftentimes, like if you look at Uniswap, for example, you know, Labs makes a ton of money. The token is basically a meme coin, right? There's a fee switch that could be enabled, but it never has been. And obviously the influence from, you know, Labs and like core investors, they have enough basically voting power to make sure that that never happens if they wanted to, at least with kind of current ownership. So this feels like a step in the right direction. I'm curious in your guys' thoughts, like, are there more specific things we want to see out of like token labs, or just like how a transition like this might play out, or like thoughts
Yeah.
around revenue share, what we're doing with tokens in general? Like, I think this is going to become more and more of a thing. And certainly like having a strong voice here about like what is a good model is going to be important going into the future, because in the past, like you hear a lot of people who are like, you know, give all the revenue back to the token, but that's not really the best design either. You know, in some cases maybe it can work. There's maybe small edge cases where that can work, but it's probably not often a good idea for a business to just give back all of its revenues to its, you know, quote unquote shareholders every single time. Curious if you guys have big thoughts.
Yeah, there's two things I really like about the Morph announcement. The first is that you have a legal guarantee that the token is going to be the only form of value accrual for Morpho, because the Morpho Association is structured as a French nonprofit organization, and like legally they are prohibited from having any shareholders or distributing any profits like externally. So you kind of have like a legal guarantee there that the Morpho token is the only way you can get some sort of upside exposure to Morpho. And then the other thing that I really like is that they, in the article, they made a huge case for reinvesting protocol profits or fees instead of like accruing them to the token directly, either by token buyback and burn or like some form of staking yield. And I really like this long-term approach, because I think like a lot of crypto protocols today have sort of this short-termism where they instantly distribute fees back to stakers or allocate them to token buybacks and burns. And I feel like for many of these protocols, they're kind of like startups and are very early stage in their growth cycle, and they're better off reinvesting rather than just like distributing that to the stakers. Like, yes, Bach.
Finish up. I will argue with you later.
Okay, cool. I feel like if you look at the Web2 examples, right? Like, for instance, Apple didn't pay a dividend like for 17 years. Like, Tesla went public in 2010. They still haven't paid off a dividend. I don't see people arguing about why Apple and Tesla are bad investments because they don't have like dividends back to shareholders. I think, yeah. Well, let's give the counter argument.
My my general idea with this is that I agree with you, but but for the current market where the market is semi immature, let's say just semi immature, a buyback program adds this idea of value accrual to the token, this narrative. Now let's ignore the fact that it's like probably not the best thing to do if you haven't completely carved out your market share, you're not the leader, you don't have a moat, whatever. But if you just have, let's say, a 25%, 30% buyback, that signals that, look, there is at least some form of value accrual going to my token. Now, if the crypto market was such that we were 100% sure that all tokens were the sole holders of like that equity, you get what I'm trying to say? Like, there's no dual structure. We all know that it's just a token. Then, yes, it makes sense, reinvest it. But I don't think that's what I think. Like, if I see a token, my first guess is that there's a reason that Morpho had to write this blog and make these changes, because the first guess that you have when a token, when a protocol launches a token is, okay, well, I'm pretty sure they also have equity, so I don't know what the fuck the use for this token is. In that case, I think it makes sense to do like a 20-25% buyback, just to get some value accrual to the token. On top of that, it's like crypto's very narrative driven. Still, it like I would say it's probably like 70% narrative, 30% fundamentals. I'm sure people will disagree with me. So I think given that split, it makes sense to buy back because it just gives you a good valuation bump. And in crypto, people use the products that have like higher market cap means less likely to be scammy, I think, still for people. And people want to use the products that they hold, that goes up, that they can root for. Um, I know that's technically not like the way that we are supposed to do it. It's just one of the funky parts about crypto.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think it's an artifact of the two dual ownership model, basically. And if, like you're saying, if equity didn't exist behind these things and it was just tokens, then I'm sure there would there would probably still be people on CT saying, what happened to the 100% buybacks and stuff. But realistically, like it wouldn't make sense anymore. There'd be not a need to do that, and you could basically operate these tokens as if they were businesses essentially. Um, and so I think that's probably where we're headed if more teams start adopting this model. And I mean, I think my basic expectation is that they will or should, would or should, given current, like, at least in the US, like the administration is far more, is easing off the, hesitancy of the past around tokens and, being securities offerings and things of that nature, kind of warming up to that. I think, maybe we still need to see some more like written down legislation that says, X, Y, and Z, this is okay, this is not okay. But I think it's great that Morpho's taking this step. They're sort of, probably one of the few who are trying to like break into whatever that next kind of version of a token design looks like. And it seems like a good start.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think like buybacks today are kind of like this signal of like there's alignment between like token holders and whatever that is. But I think I like this Morpho approach because it adds another way to signal alignment without giving back this optionality of investing fees in growth instead of just giving it out so early in their life cycle. So I think it adds a new like optionality to add like this alignment, if you will, between token holders and the protocol. I don't think it's going to happen like for US based protocols, at least in the short term. I think it's more likely to happen like in European jurisdictions in France, Switzerland, or whatever, where there's like more like flexibility in terms of like structure, and they don't fear like their token being cataloged as a security.
Yeah, I like that. As long as we can get away from this design where, historically it's just felt like you know that these teams have equity, and then they do a token, and then if there's no revenue that drives to this token or to the DAO or what have you that represents the token, it's like, is this token just like, is this like an exit kind of scam? Like they get their value from it. Maybe they use some of the tokens to incentivize, their metrics, get people to farm volume or what have you, and then that makes their equity valuations look even better too. But then have no intention of doing anything with the token. So seeing some intention here, I think is good. That's generally, I think that's positive. We need to see more teams kind of going in this path. But I think you're right, Carlos. Like I think the U.S. markets, they need more time. They're going to want a little more regulatory clarity, or at least like indications from SEC or whoever to say like maybe this is generally okay to do. And I don't think we're quite there yet. They're happy to say that commemorative coins and meme coins and NFTs and whatnot are not securities, but we've not seen some strong language yet on tokens generally. So we'll see. Cool. I guess one last topic for today. I think this is an easy one, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on what's interesting. Like, what are we exploring right now? Because I think, we're getting into the summer. This is usually like a kind of a slower, more of a lull in the markets kind of time period, but it's also a good time to check out like what new apps are popping up, what new ecosystems are popping up. I'll shout out some big ones that I think are maybe where our heads are at, but like, obviously Hyperliquid has a pretty strong narrative right now. The Hyper EVM is maybe a place to look around. And then, Solana has been a big, DeFi ecosystem since its run up. So curious if there's like new apps that we're exploring there. And then outside of that, like the sort of other ecosystems, like, maybe the tier twos of places where people park capital of, Aptoses and Swees or Avalanches, or are there interesting things happening in these kind of side places that maybe aren't the front and center? What are we looking at?
Yeah, I played around with the Hyper EVM. My thought so far is that it's still early stage. I feel like a lot of the apps I use are like copycats of other applications you see on other chains. However, that is really just the case with new ecosystems. That's what you would expect. So like on the DEX side, you have like Kitten Swap is like an Aero. You have like Hyper Swap is just like an AMM. On the lending side, I think like Felix is like one of the biggest ones.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
liquidy, right? It's liquidy. No, it's not. Yeah, it's liquidy.
Liquidity.
You know
Which
liquidy?
one?
Felix.
I haven't tried out that one. Oh yeah. You say the copycat on, yeah, I see
Yeah.
what you
Yeah, it's the same model. Yeah.
yeah. And then yeah, I played around with this cool liquid launch. I shielded the other day. I'm not financial advice, obviously. I don't know if it's a scam or not, but it's like the pom pom version of the Hyper EVM, and they also have like an aggregator. I think is the only aggregator on the Hyper EVM, though I'm not as knowledgeable. Maybe there are other aggregators, and they do have a token that, like, speaking of like distributing value back to the users, they distribute 100% of the fees back to the token holders. So it's gotten like a big narrative in this Hyper EVM sector. But yeah, I feel like it's one of the most interesting ecosystems to like farm because it's so early stage, and usually you have like a big wealth effect from hype that's just going to flow naturally to the EVM.
He mentioned the one that I was going to bring up, which I feel like is a bit unfair.
Which one?
On Hyperliquid, I've been mainly using Hyper EVM. To be honest with you, I think, Danny, this was the wrong time to ask this. I don't want to tell you how to be a host, but I mean, we have Monad and Mega Eve coming out hopefully over the next few months. I think that'll be a bit more exciting. I'm a little bit disappointed overall. Why did he leave? He got really angry when he left.
I pressed the
Um,
wrong button.
it's okay. I'm a bit disappointed in a lot of these chains. I feel like we're not really scamming anything. Like, I think the last time I bought something that was pure dog shit was on Abstract. It was this thing called Bitcoin. Do you remember it? Nobody buys it.
Yep.
I mean, if you buy this,
Yeah.
you're an idiot at this point. But I think that was the last thing that I can remember where I was like, holy fuck, I'm in a scam right now. Let's pump it. But since then, I haven't like had anything particularly interesting. I'm not a big like lending borrowing guy. I'm not gonna deposit for 0.8% yield on Aave. I don't care. Um, I'm on the hyper EVM just because I think maybe there's an airdrop. Um, I've actually been trading like a small. I've been doing like my small perps gambling on Lighter. I think there might be an airdrop for that at some point. Um, I don't think it's as good as Hyperliquid, which is something I wrote about, but there's no point in not making money if it's potentially there. That's my big like. Um, Apart from that, I feel like it's a bit boring, right? Like I think Mega ETH will probably be pretty good. I'm kind of excited about the Mega Mafia projects. Lock me up. I like Euphoria. I saw this one. I don't know if you guys saw, but it's this. She's clicking on the chart and it's like putting in like it's like squares, like a grid style. She's clicking
Yeah.
on a chart. To the listeners who aren't watching the video, I'm doing grid clicking. I'm kind of excited for stuff like that. Mega Mega ETH Monad. I don't know. I need to do a deep dive into that. Danny, you wrote a
Yeah.
report. Maybe I'll read over that this week. But general
Yeah.
view is it's a bit boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But to your point, like, I'd love for both of those chains to go to mainnet this month, but
I don't think so.
we'll see. I don't think it's going to happen. I think, I bet we probably have a quarter, so I can
Yeah.
ask the question again in another quarter, and then maybe there'll be some new stuff. I
think
will
so.
say, yeah, I'm pretty similar. It's like I'm looking around for things. Hyper EVM seems like one of the main ones if you're looking at maybe a potential airdrop. I've been using like Axiom on Solana just because they had such an insane run up, and I wrote a report on that, like what a hypothetical airdrop would look like. If they did it, they would kind of be breaking the mold, right? Like the top bots, trading bots on Solana have historically not done tokens. So they'd be breaking the mold a little bit. I think it'd be like a highly anticipated, highly like loved token drop, to be quite honest, just given its usage. And the expected value there for just trading on the thing seems pretty good.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I saw that Sharples posted about the arena on Avalanche. I've not used Avalanche in a long time, but it's like a SocialFi like launchpad app, and it's their TVL or their market cap of tokens launched on there surpassed 100 million yesterday. So it's one of the only launchpads right now where aggregate token market cap is going up. And I think part of that's probably because it's relatively small. Like 100 million total is not huge. When we're looking at pump fund, it's billions. But maybe you need to like look into the smaller pockets for interesting things. And I'll agree on abstract as well. That was one like I was looking there, maybe a month ago. I played like the Cambria Gold Rush season 2 for a week. That was pretty fun, but
How was that?
it seems like we're in a lull.
I check it out.
Yeah.
I kind of miss. I just miss like having a lot of stuff to do. I feel like this cycle I never got that. Like I need to do a lot of stuff versus like last time I was like, holy fuck, I can't keep up. I need to like make a list of everything I need to do every day. Versus this time it's like, okay, like I guess I'll buy this and sell that. Part of that is I think I'm probably experimenting less because I lost money doing a lot of stuff last cycle, so maybe I'm just like I should probably not do all of these things. Part of that is it's not
He
as
made it.
like
He made it, so now he doesn't need to farm.
I did not make it, man. I'm on a podcast talking about Avalanche Arena.
Yeah. I feel no, I agree with that sentiment. I feel like maybe it's just like sentiment, but I feel like we haven't seen like 0 to 1 innovations, like a lot of them this cycle, as opposed to just like copycats on new chains. And that's part of like why it's so boring, just to like try out these new lending protocol that just does exactly the same as other lending protocols, or these new decks, or these new launchpad, or whatever. So I feel like there's like that, like this missing of like 0 to 1, like new primitives or new innovations. And I feel like this may be controversial, it may not, but I feel like new, like improvements in tech, like for new chains, are no longer like the main thing. I don't think like Mega ETH or Monad are going to be like huge successes just because they have like this like better tech or whatever. I feel like a bigger like catalyst is just like this wealth effect that's flowing from the native asset to like project tokens of the new chain. So for instance, you saw that with Solana in late 2023, 2024, where Sol had a huge run up, and then projects within the Solana ecosystem benefit from that wealth effect. I feel that's why I'm excited about Hyper EVM, is not because Hyper EVM has better tech, it does not, but I feel like the wealth effect from Hype and the community has like this potential to like flow into these applications. Because like if you were looking purely at the tech, or you would look for other applications. But I feel like the community and like this like yeah, this wealth effect from the main token is probably more important at this stage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely agree. It is like a big poor chain right now, objectively, because well, first of all, deposit caps are super low. Like I think, Carlos, if you wanted to deposit into like BTC and to Hyperlend, you couldn't. They don't have any space left. I think they have 30 BTC in it, which seems ridiculous, right? Um,
Yes.
so yeah, it is like it's very early stages. They are working on it. It's nothing special right now. I am. It's the only one. I agree with you though. It's the only one that I'm like very actively, at least trying to participate in, because I want to have kind of an like my ear to the ground over there, because there's, like you said, there's been a lot of money being made on the airdrop, and the main token. So I think eventually something will probably pop up. I did write a report on it. I don't know if you looked at that, Carlos, because if you looked at it, you wouldn't have mentioned liquid launch. You would have mentioned another thing, but that's okay. Um, yeah, I think it's good to keep track of it. And if you are launching shitty games on the blockchains, please DM me on Twitter, Salve Boccaccio, so that I can play them and not be bored anymore. I'm sick and tired of gambling.
he wants to lose all of his money
I'm
on
just
shitty
bored. Like
on-chain
I wanna
games.
I wanna click on stuff. You know what I mean? I wanna take on some fucking smart contract risk.
We need some tap to earn games come back
I
into
want
into the
tap to
limelight.
earn. I want tap to earn, dude. My favorite time this cycle, like a year ago, unironically, blast. Crypto valleys. I lost money on. Well, I made some money and then I got in a second time and lost money. But crypto valleys, absolutely dog shit game. You click on some crops, you plant them. It's like Stardew Valley, but you have to spend like 40 grand. Um, Stupid fucking game. It was just so much fun. It was so much fun. I guess that might be just the gambling aspect. I just like to get log in
I think
every day. I need to water my plants. And there's like a gotcha element. You get seeds. They do like a little, and then I always got the dog shit seeds. I never got a rare. It's fun stuff. That's what I want back.
just put gotcha on the blockchain and you'll have Bach as a user. It's really that simple. I think another point, Carlos, I wanted to bring up is like when I think back to 2021, people like it was. I think it was easier to go to like the nth chain and do like mess around with the 5 apps because they all had tokens and there was like this rotational thing that was happening where you know this chain would all the tokens would go up 300% and then the next chain all the tokens would go up 300%, and so it's like, yeah, sure, I'll go buy like the shitty dex token on Harmony or whatever and then go to the next one and repeat. And that's not quite as much of a thing anymore. And I think on the in the tech improvement side, I think you're right there. Like for apps as well, it's like we're at this point where there's like these slower, smaller, incremental changes to things. And it's not so frequently that like a new app pops up that is very much like a 0 to 100. They we get those few like big winners here and there. Pump Fund was a big winner. Hyperliquid was a big winner. Things that related to those trading bots, things of that nature, like have done really well. But you're kind of like sitting around waiting for like what's that next big app going to be? Is what it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you can also bet on existing chains. Like for instance, there are Solana protocols that are high quality and are still like pre TGE. that are like interesting to farm. Like I know there are two yield trading platforms, Exponent and Radex, which haven't released a token. They may release one that may be interesting. There is Loopscale, which is like a on-chain order book like lending market, and you can like loop like Exponent positions there. There's also like Fragmatic, which is like a restaking protocol. So there are still like options to farm on existing chains. I think just people need to prioritize and like know what to do with the capital. I know that's something I struggle. Like if I want to farm X thing, like you obviously need to like consider the opportunity cost of removing like capital and other areas. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the other part of it, is that it I think it generally feels a bit more well understood these days, like a little more researched. It seems like it's going to become more and more uncommon that you put $100 into a protocol and that turns into $1 million. You've got droves of people who are they're doing the anticipated FTVs and like, what's the yield I'm going to earn on this position that I've got stuck into restaking protocols and what have you. So that part of it that part of it I think kind of dilutes the expectations a little bit, right? Which makes sense, right? But yeah, I think a bunch of the teams you mentioned, like they're all doing points programs as well currently, like Exponent, Radex, Fragmetric, Kairos, Loopscale. I think they're all doing points programs actively, and you can like get restaked assets on one of the restaking platforms and then go and do things with them on like Radex or Exponent, and then do things with them on Loopscale. So there's ways that you can kind of like chain some of those together and maybe make that more meaningful. But yeah, cool. We can call it there. I think good pod, covered a couple of meaningful topics. We have not talked about something today, Bach, that we need to talk about. It's coming up 2 weeks. Permissionless
No.
4, Brooklyn, New York. The dunk tank will be at the 0xResearch Arena.
Should we add the
The
producer
0x
up
Arena.
there to show it as well? Should we add our producer or no?
Does
I think he
does
I
the
think he
producer
might.
want to come on?
Can
I
he
don't know what
even
the
hear?
producer wants to. He's hiding.
Hey guys, if you come, we're going to dunk tank our producer. He's going to get wet and wild at 0x Arena at Permissionless from June 24th to the 26th. Make sure to be there. Brooklyn, New York, the greatest damn city in the world. Carlos, anything else you want to say?
Not really. I'm excited to see you go in the dunk tank.
I'm not even gonna say
Carlos will be there. He's going to be dunking Bach personally. He wants to be the one to do it. 10% off tickets, 0x10, link in the description. Get your tickets. Meet us there. Yes, Bach.
I don't really understand how the dunk tank works. Actually, will people be throwing stuff at a
Yeah, that's usually how
lever?
it goes. There's like a target. There's usually a target, and then you get like a baseball or something, and you
Okay.
have to hit the
Doesn't it
target.
make if I was Carlos and I was sitting, I would throw the ball at me directly, trying to hurt
Well,
me. From
usually there's like a
oh,
net or something in front of it, so you can't do that. But I mean, if you want to injure him, then
I
I'm
mean,
just
yeah,
I don't know if legal is going to want that one though.
if it's like a baseball type of thing, that I might miss and hit bug because I never do that. But like, if it's like just throwing it with a hand, it's going to be easier. Yeah.
I don't know how we're gonna do this. I think it'll be
I'm
fun.
being told we've got 6 hospital beds on standby just in case. No, I'm just kidding. No one's going to get hurt in the dunk tank unless you're like deathly afraid of water that's like 4 foot high.
Four
You're
foot
probably
is
going to be
quite a
okay.
lot, by the way. 4 foot is. I'm like, well,
It's
I don't want
it's
to.
not a lot.
I'm not the high talk.
Are you you're gonna drown in 4 foot of water? It might not even be that high. I don't own a dunk tank. I don't know the dimensions off rip. It's probably something like that. It's probably 3-4 foot of water. It's got to be enough so that like you're sitting and then you like get dunked. You're probably a few feet tall when you're sitting, so it's got to be that high.
How tall do you think I am?
I don't know, 6 foot.
Good.
Subtle nod. Well, we're gonna find out live at Permissionless June 24th through the 26th. We'll see you guys there. I think we're going to call it. We're rambling. Thanks for coming on today, guys. Thanks, listeners, for tuning in. And we will see you next time. See you guys.
See you guys.